Without further ado, I just want to remind everybody, you are on kit 168A. You can look at the side of your box to make sure that you're on 168A. It's very important that you're on the correct kit because, of course, if you're buying multiple kits of ours, it's important that you see this right away.
Okay, thanks, Lee Meng. All right, so welcome. And today's session, we're going to focus on two strategies, right? We're going to focus on impact compounds. I'll do a brief run through of those. The last couple of sessions I've done, I've spent a lot of time on impact compounds. And everything today I'm going to be talking about is in my book in detail, okay? Impact compounds are a group of probably about a dozen to 14 of the most important aromas and flavors in wines. Some of them have to do with grape chemistry. Some of them have to do with environment, like the vineyard, and some of them have to do with winemaking. All right. The important thing is that, and again, if I had to bring this into a certain context, if I had to go back and prepare for the MS tasting exam now, I'd focus on three things. I'd focus on cause and effect, which we're not going to talk about this time, but I will mention it constantly and point it out. And then I'd focus on impact compounds and I'd focus on structure. Those are the three most important aspects of tasting to me. And I bring that up because these impact compounds, and I'm going to go through the list in just a second, we as professionals and students studying for exams, we have to own them. Okay, that's all there is to it. And so here's the list. And again, I mentioned a few seconds ago. So the last time we did one of these sessions, I focused a lot on these and I talked about each one individually. So I'm just going to run them through quickly. If I run through them too quickly, know that they're in the book. If you go to my blog, timgaiser.com, or if you Google timgaiser.com and blog impact compounds, you're going to find several posts on them. Okay. But to talk about them, botrytis, of course, is a mold that lives in vineyard soil. It gets all over the grapes. Spores pierce the skins. They change the flavors. Practically all the world's great dessert wines are made from botrytis fruit. But it also ends up on, fruit that becomes dry wines too. And so we will look for it in the two white wines that we're going to taste. Next up, Brettanomyces. It too is a yeast, lives in vineyard soil. Obviously, it gets all over the plant material. In small amounts, it adds an earthy, leathery quality to the wine. In extreme amounts, it can really dominate and make a wine flawed. It smells like, a stable on a hot day, which is what you don't want to encounter. Okay. But, when you smell it, you associate certain styles of wine and even places for it. Okay. Next up is carbonic maceration, and draw a line across to the other side, the other list, and carbonic maceration and stem inclusion. So carbonic maceration is a way of fermenting grapes, right? You put whole clusters of grapes into a stainless steel tank, you pump CO2 in it, and what happens inside? Magic. No, what happens inside is two things. One, the grapes in the top crush the grapes in the bottom, gravity. Nature bats last. But what happens to the grapes up top is that fermentation starts inside the grape. It's called intracellular fermentation. And then that carries over to the grapes and the must, the juice that's below. And what you're doing is you're extracting a lot of color, a lot of fruit, but no tannin. And we associate carbonic maceration. And again, you got whole clusters of grapes, so you got stems. So you're fermenting with stems. We associate that with Beaujolais and Beaujolais Village and Nouveau Beaujolais. Okay. It's used for other things too, but that's what it's known for. Diacetyl on the list is next. White wines, diacetyl, malolactic fermentation. Diacetyl is a byproduct of malolactic. It smells like butter and buttered popcorn. And we associate it usually with Chardonnay, but certainly you smell it in wines like Viognier and even Sauvignon Blanc blends. Yeah, wherever it's used. And just so you know, red wines, practically all of them go through malolactic because otherwise they'd be so acidic and hard, they wouldn't be drinkable. Okay. Next up is lees contact. After fermentation, you got lees. Lees are in the wine that cause fermentation. If you leave the lees in the wine, over time, it can add richness and texture. It adds certain aromas and flavors and, frankly, some complexity. In white wine, it's done quite a bit. In red wine, not too much, because with red wine, and usually you have extended aging in barrels, and if you have lees, you run into all sorts of problems. And so winemakers usually, not always, will get red wine off the lees when they put it into a barrel. Okay? All right, now we're to new oak. That's pretty simple. winemakers will use oak in varying degrees in terms of how old they are to age wine. And it's just important for us as students and professionals to be able to recognize that. Okay. Okay. And then next on the list is phenolic bitterness. And again, I'm going a little quickly, but this is all in the book and it's on my blog too. So there's no panicking. There's no panicking in wine. No crying either. Okay. Okay. So phenolic bitterness, go up there and find on the other side of the page terpenes, which means flowers. Okay. So with semi-aromatic grapes like Albarino, Grüne Veltliner, Chenin Blanc, and fully aromatic white grapes, such as Gewürztraminer, Torrentes, Viognier, Muscat. Those grapes, relatively speaking, have thicker skins. They have a lot of those floral phenolic compounds. And because the skins are thicker, if the juice is in contact with the skins for any length of time, you're getting phenolics out of the wine. You get into the wine, I should say. So in other words, the wines are not only floral, there's a little bit of bitterness on the finish. And that bitterness is like tannin in red wine. As a matter of fact, tannin is a phenol that comes from skins, and it gives the wine structure and the potential to age. Okay, last thing on the left column is pyrazines. So you get pyrazines in Sauvignon Blanc and all the Cabernet Sauvignon family grapes, of which Sauvignon Blanc is a parent. Yeah, so it's related. So pyrazines are herbal, vegetal type notes in Sauvignon Blanc and red wines. All right, up at the top of the second column, raisination means what it says, that the grapes are on the vine so long they achieve the first stages of raisination. Okay, and when you think of raisination, you recognize either a grape that didn't ripen evenly or a grape where they left the fruit on the vine for a long time, like Amarone, because that's the style they want to achieve. Okay, all right. Rotundone, I think, is the last chemical name, and that means pepper. White pepper, black pepper. White pepper for Grüne Veltliner, black pepper for Zinfandel and Syrah, and other Rhone grapes. Okay, we're going to look for that today. Stem inclusion, we talked about. TDN is the fusel gasoline petrol note that you get in Riesling. And again, that's not unique to Riesling. It's in trace amounts in other white wines, but we usually associate it to Riesling. Okay, thiols are, not to go geek on you, but they're sulfur compounds, okay? And that's why Cabernet Sauvignon smells like black currants. It's why Sauvignon Blanc smells like, grapefruit and kiwi and elderflower and things like that, okay? And then the last thing on the list is volatile acidity. It's VA. So VA, volatile acidity, smells like vinegar. It's a byproduct of fermentation. It's in trace amounts in every single wine. But if we can detect it, people are kind of divided on it. There are certain schools of and kinds of old school red wines, which is a better way to put it. And I just mentioned Amarone. Perfect example. Usually Amarone has VA in it because you've got so much sugar, you're fermenting to really high alcohol, usually doing it fast. And if you do it, you get VA. All right. Trust me, that's the most yak, yak, yak intense slide. So I apologize for that. Again, that's a lot of information. Let's talk about structure. Okay, structure is important. Okay, you can go ahead, Lee Meng, thanks. Structure is like the bones of any wine, right? And so you're talking about alcohol and acidity in white wines and phenolic bitterness with a lot of them. And then with red wines, we're going to add tannin to that. And that tannin can be either grape tannin, stem tannin, or it can be oak tannin, right? Usually you got the grape and oak tannin working. And then when you've got something like carbonic maceration or whole cluster, if you have whole clusters of grapes, again, with the stems, and you ferment, you're going to have stem tannin. And there's a way to tell it. Okay. So again, I can't tell you how important it is. You got to be able to assess structure consistently and accurately. Certainly there are ways to do it. I talk about it in the book and on the blog, but we're really going to focus on the structure today. Okay. Why? Because we got to connect the dots. You could even taste a wine, start with the structure and work backwards and you would be successful. Okay. So you have to connect the structure to the character of the fruit. How ripe is the fruit? If you got really ripe fruit, you got high alcohol. Odds are the acid is not high, exceptions, and acid has been added. We'll see how that works with the red wines, okay? Because acidulating red wine, where you're adding tartaric acid, which is powdered tartaric acid from grapes, a lot of people do that, and it's legal in many countries, and it's accepted practice. That's how red wines that are high alcohol are balanced. Otherwise, they would not be balanced, okay? And they wouldn't age. We also want to connect the dots between structure and cause and effect. And that's once again asking, okay, so why am I getting raisin fruit? Was it picked late? Was it a warm vintage? Or maybe it's a style of wine like Amarone or Zinfandel, where the desired style is to get to 15% alcohol or even higher, okay? So cause and effect is really important, and it's the third pillar that we're not talking about today specifically, but we're going to be referring to it constantly. And then finally, you're putting all those pieces together to say, well, this wine has these impact compounds, but it's got this structure. And so as a grape, it's probably from here. That's where we want to go with this. That's the direction. Okay, let's start with acidity. There are 4 of them in wine. Tartaric acid is the most important one. That's the acid you add if the grapes got really ripe and the wine is acid deficient. Obviously, you can't smell acidity, but what you can smell is really tart fruit. It tastes sour. It makes your saliva glands work because one of the things they do is balance acid and pH in your mouth. And so how do you check for it? You take a sip of wine, you hold it in your mouth for a few seconds, spit it out or swallow it. And you go, wow, my salivary glands are going nuts. So the acid on this wine is at least medium plus, maybe even high. And if it's high, you can feel it on the enamel of your front teeth. Okay. And then I mentioned acidulation, acidification. Those 2 terms are synonymous. And again, that's adding powdered tartaric acid to wine, either when it's fermenting or after the fact. And you want to do it before because it's much better. Alcohol is next. So we're talking about ethanol. Okay. And the range of alcohol in wine is from 5% for Moscato d'Asti all the way up to 16% for something like Zinfandel or Petit Syrah or Amarone. Yep. And with everything in between. Table wines usually are between 13.5 and 14.5 now. That number seems to have settled down. It kept going up for a while. What does it smell like? Well, it smells like really ripe or raisinated fruit. Of course, you've got the sensation of warmth in your nose and then your throat and even if your chest. I call it the Grey Goose effect, when you've got the full body heat going down. You don't get that in wine. Only with cocktails. Okay. What is alcohol? What does it taste like? It's tasteless, but really you connect it to really, really ripe fruit. Okay. And then it feels like, as I mentioned, heat, in your body senses alcohol as heat. And how do you check for it? When you spit the wine out, you say, oh, and you inhale. And then you really get a good gauge of it. All right. Moving on to phenolic bitterness. Pause for just a second. So here we're talking about white wines only, okay? Phenolic compounds. They're in the skins of the grape. And even if, say, white wine, the juice is in contact with skins for a brief length of time, you're pulling phenolics out of the skins, yeah? And think about orange wine, because orange wine is white wine made like red wine, where you've got extended contact for several days or who knows how long with the skin. So not only does the wine get orange in color, in other words, it oxidized, but it's pulling, all this bitterness and even tannin out of the skins. And that's why orange wines, to me, they're tannic. And there the process trumps whatever grape it is because it just becomes orange wine. Okay. What else about it? Phenols don't smell like anything. They taste bitter, like almond skins, and they're always on the finish. And how do you check for it? Again, you take a sip of the wine, hold it in your mouth 3 to 5 seconds. You wait, spit it out, and then pay attention to the finish. And you get that bitterness on the finish. Odds are, if the wine is floral, being a semi-aromatic white grape or aromatic, you're going to have phenolic bitterness. That's how it works. Okay. And then finally, tannins. Okay, so tannins from grape skins, from stems, or barrels. All 3 of those things in red wine, okay? Overly brewed tea or baker's chocolate or coffee, really strong coffee without sugar. And it feels astringent, it feels gritty on the palate. So taste bitter, feels astringent. That's 2 different things. How do you check for it? Well, with red wine, again, you take a sip, hold the wine in your mouth for a few seconds, spit it out, and then you feel you're just sensitive to the astringency that's going on in your mouth. Sometimes you get wines that have both skin and grape tannin. Skin tannin for me, front of the mouth. It's different for some people, but many people, grape tannins, front of the mouth, oak tannins in the back, stem tannins in the middle, in the mid palate, okay? We're gonna check for all this as we taste through the wines. Okay. That's all the preliminary stuff we have to get through. And I apologize because I was up here yakking. My wife, Carla, would say, slow down. Okay, so now we're going to slow down. Let's get started tasting. So everybody grab glass number 1. And just a quick reminder, we're going to be comparing these wines. Hopefully you've poured them out into 6 glasses. If not, hopefully you got at least a couple or 3 glasses because we're going to go back and forth between them. You know, we're going to be comparing these first two white wines. And then when we get to the red wines, again, we're going to be going back and forth between them. Okay. All right. So let's start with the questions that I've got listed on this slide. The important thing to note is that these three questions are generally the same for all 6 wines. I want to know what the impact compounds are, if they are there, and then the structure. How do you describe the structure? You know, with white wines, alcohol, acidity, phenolic bitterness, if it's there. And once we get to the red wines, tannin. How much tannin is there, and what kind of tannin is it? Okay, and in this specific wine, wine number 1, I'm asking you, is there oak on the wine? And or is there phenolic bitterness? Okay, I'm looking at everything. Everything's good so far. All right, are we ready, everybody? Let's get to it. So Lee Mang's going to do the side for me. Notice that she's holding a glass, and I would say this color is kind of like a pale straw, maybe not a pale straw, pale yellow, deep straw. Okay, that's what I'm going to call it. There's a little bit of green in it too. Means the wine could be fairly young. And then in terms of the legs and tiers, you can either do that with your glass or you can swirl it carefully. And tiers, legs, viscosity here is a solid medium plus. Okay. And I'll comment about that at the very end because that's curious. All right. In terms of what the wine smells like, go ahead and smell it for a few seconds. It's lovely. First thing to notice that there's quite a bit of fruit going on here, right? And different kinds of fruit, okay? So if I start with my categories of orchard fruit, yeah, there's some green apple here, maybe even Fuji apple. It's fresh. And then there's citrus fruit. And the citrus fruit to me is both sweet and sour. There's a little bit of Meyer lemon here, also some orange, but there's also some grapefruit that's tart. And we'll see how that translates from the nose to the palate, okay? Tropical fruit too. The first thing I put my nose in the glass, there's some pineapple, there's definitely some guava, maybe some mango. These are all fresh and they're ripe, okay? And then I think one of the major players here is stone fruit, pit fruit. So there's some yellow peach here, some apricot, maybe even some nectarine, more like white nectarine. And again, those are fresh, okay? What else? I'm going to smell the wine again. And here I'm going for non-fruit because, you know, just as an aside, that's a lot of fruit and everybody focuses on the fruit and goes blah, blah, blah. But note that the fruit is the kinds of fruit you're getting. I mean, for everything I just tossed out to you, what is important is the part where I was going, well, it's fresh and it's ripe. Those things are important because that connects to more information about the wine. The non-fruit that we're going to smell for now is important. Okay, and there's kind of one major thing I'm getting. It's a combo platter. It's a combo platter of a little bit of sulfur, which smells like a lit match, wooden match, and TDN, which is fusel petrol. The Brits call it petrol, but it's kind of fusel, it's gasoline-like. Okay, and and sulfur together, and that also goes with the mineral. Okay, so those three things are kind of together. There's definitely some mineral here. It's more like stony, like whetstone mineral. There's also some turned earth and mushroom. And above the glass, which is where floral aromas live, is some, you know, it's kind of like apple blossoms. It's white blossoms, okay? Otherwise than that, there's some light spice, and there's also something like lemon verbena. There's some very light, you know, herbal botanical notes, but they're not a major thing. What's the major thing here is you've got a lot of fruit, you've got earth and mineral, and you've got that TDN working, okay? All
Hey
right,
Tim,
everybody.
one
Yes.
one thing that we talked about but we forgot to say at the beginning is for everybody to remember that we're comparing all 6 wines all the way to the
Yes.
end. So
Right.
do not pour out all your wines as we're talking
Yeah.
about wine 1 and 2, because this is a comparison seminar. So hopefully if you're sharing it too, you know, you want to fight for that last drop because we're going to be going back to wine 1 and so on and so forth periodically throughout, especially the red wines.
Okay. All right. So I hope everybody's saying I'm stuttering. I'm hoping I'm not stuttering. It's not me.
It's a little bit of a stutter, but I'm catching the important parts, so hopefully most people can too. But I'm not sure if it's on your connection side. But there's nothing we
Okay.
can do about it right now. So
It could be the connections here in New Mexico. Who knows? Yes. Okay. All right, everybody. So everybody taste it, please. Mm. Wow, that's good wine. Taste it again for science. Okay. All right. Many things to point out. One, remember I kind of telegraphed. I said I wouldn't be surprised if the wine gets tartar on the palate. It did. Okay. So all that fruit I was talking about, it gets tartar. And I'm squinting, which means what? The acid is high. It's got a high acidity. If I say, oh, and inhale, the wine's got medium alcohol, right? Maybe 12%. Yeah. At the same time, notice how rich the wine is. Yeah. This is really good quality wine. So if a wine is this rich and it doesn't have high alcohol, that means that's called dry extract. So it's dry extract, which means that's technically it's a chemist term. It means particulate matter in solution. What it means is that these vines are old, low yielding, and they didn't find and filter this wine heavily. So it's very rich, concentrated, and intense because it is really high quality. Okay. All right. What else about it? All the fruit I was talking about just gets tartar. The apples now is green. The pineapple, the mango, the guava, they're underripe. The fruit went from sweet and ripe, citrus fruit, it's all tart now. So it's all grapefruit and lemon and lime. And then the mineral, the middle of the wine between the fruit and the acid, it's really intense. So it's all really like wet stones. And then that TDN thing, the fusel, the thing is there. Okay. It's not sure, but it's definitely there between the fruit. And then notice the acid, which is high, and the alcohol again. Okay. Long finish, lots of complexity. Okay. Here's your ballot. Vote early, only vote once. So your choices are Gewürztraminer and Riesling and Sauvignon Blanc. And if you have something other and you want to throw it in there, by all means, you should definitely do it. Okay. And your place choices, region choices are France for all three of those, Germany for the Gewürztraminer and Riesling, Australia for all three of them, and New York for Riesling because some of the best Rieslings in the US come from New York, the Finger Lakes. Beautiful place too. Okay.
Important, important for those of you who are joining us for the first time. These polls are anonymous unless you choose to tell us what other things you have. Don't be shy to put other because, as Tim said, it really helps us to understand where you're coming from, and it'll help us. Obviously, it wouldn't be anonymous if you wrote it in as to what you're asking, but it will really help us to educate on whatever the confusion is on that particular wine. So hopefully you guys are using the clues. Tim, I think that there'll be a little bit of work. We've got voters on all three varieties, one leading
Mm,
variety, but all three are getting votes. So
okay.
it'll be interesting for us to go through that. And in terms of the regions, we're seeing about 70% coming in the old world, but
Yep.
there's still a sizable 30% in the new world. So
Okay. Let's see what we got. And Jerry's asking a question. So Jerry is asking about TDN if it's not Riesling. Jerry, as grapes like Gewürztraminer and Pinot Gris, especially from Alsace, even Grüne Veltliner, as they get old, they can show TDN too. Yeah. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, so a lot of you went for Riesling, some went for Gewürztraminer, some from Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, so I would just say, with Gewürztraminer, we're looking for a much more floral wine. And with Sauvignon Blanc, there's got to be pyrazines. There's got to be the green bell pepper, herbal, grassy type thing. A lot of you went to Germany, some went to France, some went to Australia, and some went to New York. Okay, that's great. All right, so let's see what we have, Lee Man.
you're not going to reveal anything. I like that. Okay.
No, no, no. We're going to get on Lee Meng's private jet in San Francisco. Actually, we got to go to SFO first. You live in the peninsula anyway, right? All right. So let's go to let's see where we're going. So we're going to leave the Bay Area, and we've got to fly overnight. Make sure we all take our blankies, and yeah, and we are going to end up in, as many of you thought, we're going to end up in Germany. Yeah. But we're not going to end up in Mosel, the Mosel, which is a classic place for Riesling, because the wines generally there are lower alcohol and they have residual sugar. And we're going to end up in the Pfalz. which is in southern Germany. It's actually very close to the French border in Alsace. And we're in Weitgut, Dr. Birkeland Wolf, one of the top producers in the Pfalz. And I believe they're located in Deidesheim. And they're known for dry Rieslings, brilliant dry Rieslings. And they make Grosses Gewächs, brown cru dry Riesling from several vineyards. This is their estate Riesling. And you can see this is like declassified, really good juice, right? That's why it is. That's why it's so rich, so the alcohol is 12%. And that in 2002, for the 25th anniversary of the court, Birkeland Wolf bottled 50 cases of one of their Grand Cru vineyards for us. It was technically a Spätlese Trocken, which that term cannot be used legally anymore, but it was this style, only better. It was richer. And they bottled 50 cases of it for us. And we used it for a number of years for our receptions for classes and exams. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of the Birkeland Wolf Rieslings. There is a picture of the state in Deidesheim. It is gorgeous there. It's one of the warmest parts of Germany, so the wines are richer and more opulent to begin with. You know, grapes have been grown there for 2,000 years. Yeah, when the Romans showed up in the first century AD, they were growing grapes and making wine. Curiously enough, their winemaker is Italian. Who knew? His name is Nicola Libelli. Yeah, and they make wonderful wines. Big fan. Kelly's asking lease contact. Absolutely. So, you know, I seem to recall that Birkeland Wolf, you know, their wines, the dry Rieslings are on the lease for about 3 to 5 months. Good call, Kelly. Okay. All right. So again,
sorry, I have to ask that question. So that 3 to 5 months is enough to give it that mouthfeel too?
oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And notice, look at the background and look what they're using. So, you know, in Germany, you know, you're using stainless steel, which a lot of people do. It's more expensive. Some wineries can't afford it, but you know, those are either, they're big barrels. They're like 1,000 liters, 1,200 liters, and they're inert. They're probably old. In fact, I've been to Birkeland Wolf twice, and my memory is that you know, some of the barrels were well over 100 years old, so they can use them for a long time. Okay. With that, and we're going to review once we get past wine number 2. This next wine, we're going to compare the two white wines and see what we
Yeah,
got.
Tim,
Okay, let's get to wine number 2.
You're definitely cutting out a little bit more. So we'll just if something is clearly missing from Tim's, I'll try to repeat it or ask Tim to repeat it. But yes, wine number 2, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can do, Lee Bang, you know, I have 2 lines in the house. I could literally sign off and sign back on using another connection.
Let's keep going, and then if
Okay.
it continues to be bad, then we'll, you know, maybe we'll do that in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at Steph's question, wondering about biscuit, yogurt, and sour cream also. I said there's a biscuity flavor, Steph, and you know, that's a classic least contact description. Good call. Okay, everybody, so here we go. This wine, compared to the first wine, is gold. It's gold in color, right? And, well, I should say it's yellow gold. It's yellow primarily, it's got gold highlights, okay? And what does that mean? You should ask yourself, okay, deeper color white wine could mean oak, could mean the wine's old, could mean botrytis, or it could mean skin contact, okay? So we're going to figure out which one of those it is, if it's one or more. Same questions. Check out the impact compounds. Does the wine have oak or phenolic bitterness? The Riesling had neither, by the way. And they describe the levels of acidity and alcohol. Here we go. Okay? All right, on the nose. My goodness. There's a lot going on here. Once again, there's a lot of fruit, but this time there's really ripe fruit, okay? There's yellow peach, nectarine, yellow nectarine, there's apricot, there's golden delicious apple, there's oranges, there's Meyer lemons. Really, there's banana, there's ripe guavas. So it's a cornucopia of fruit. All of it is ripe, bordering on overripe. Once we get beyond the fruit, the wine is really floral. It's pronounced floral. Terpenes. There's a lot of floral going on here. It's honeysuckle, it's jasmine, narcissus, things like that, but primarily honeysuckle, and there's honey too. And along with that, In terms of non-fruit, there's saffron, there's button mushrooms. Yeah, it's like crystallized honey. Okay, and then there's tropical fruit. There's lychee too. I didn't mention that, but there's definitely lychee or lychee here. What else? And the wine is earthy. It's like turned soil, right? And
Mhm.
mushroomy. And from there, there's no oak. Interestingly enough. And what else about this? It's just really intensely uh, exotic, perfumed white wine. Yeah. All right. So, Lynn, we're going to get to your suspicion in just a second. All right. So, everybody, why don't you taste it, please? Yeah. Okay. It's one of those things where if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay. All right. So, the wine is rich, it's full bodied, it's got residual sugar, right? Probably 12 grams, 12 grams, even more. So, it's off dry. We'll start at the structure. We're going to go backwards. So, everybody knows what happened to the acidity after the Riesling. It disappeared. So the wine has medium acid at best, right? But what it has, this wine that the Riesling didn't have, is phenolic bitterness. So everybody take another sip of the wine. Most of you probably aren't driving, so you can swallow it. Yeah, it's bitter on the finish. Yeah, it is like walnuts or almond skins. Yeah. Okay. What else? If you say, oh, and inhale, the alcohol is at least 14%. It's bordering on high. So again, these are really ripe grapes. Yep. And a lot of things that we're pointing to, such as the honey, the crystallized honey, saffron, button mushroom, it's almost like orange marmalade and stone fruit marmalade, really ripe. In fact, I'm getting heat here. And all of that points to botrytis. So we've got a really floral wine with phenolic bitterness and with botrytis. Okay. So we said the acid is medium, the alcohol is high. We'll call it high. Okay. And what else about it? The finish is long. The wine has high complexity. It's just got a lot of stuff going on. And what else about it? I think I covered practically everything in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. I'm trying to get the
Right.
poll going.
Yeah, let's bring the poll up.
Tim, the comparison between the two is really helpful. I hope folks are going back and forth.
Yeah. Okay, here are your choices. Gewürztraminer Torrentes from Argentina, and Chardonnay, which from a lot of places, France, California, even Argentina. And of course, Gewürztraminer could be from France or Germany or California for that matter. Torrentes usually from Argentina, Chardonnay from any of those places. Okay, so everybody vote.
And just a quick question. The Riesling is known as an aromatic grape,
Mm,
but it clearly has a different level of aromatic between wine one and wine two. In your
yeah.
mind, these two are still considered aromatic, even though it's so far apart in aromatics, right?
No, I do not consider Riesling aromatic. In fact, Riesling to me is semi-aromatic at best. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously this wine is from a fully aromatic grape. And so you put the two wines next to each other, there's really no mistaking them.
Hmm.
Okay, let's see how the poll is doing.
I'm going to give folks another 10 seconds because we got to move quickly today. There's a lot of comparisons. So remember, it's anonymous. Just a few more seconds and we're going to close the poll. I'm seeing edging towards 80% here.
Okay.
In three, two, one. Got to
Yeah,
work those fingers faster.
Lynn, I would absolutely agree. It's an insanely long finish. Okay. All right, so most people did the quacking duck thing. You went with Gewürztraminer. Some people Torrentes. We'll talk about that in a second. A few people went for Chardonnay. A lot of people in France. A lot of people. Some people in Germany. Some people in Argentina for the Torrentes. Okay. All right. So just to talk about first of all, we'll just say that the obvious. This is Gewürztraminer, and it is from Alsace, right? which is where the best Gewürztraminers come from, period. Other places make it. They're, Alto Adige is supposedly the spiritual home, the village of Tramin. But the wines are nothing like this. They're not as rich and unctuous as this. Ivan, that's a perfect call. This is too deep yellow for Tarantas. Tarantas you can age. Most of them you drink young. What Tarantas doesn't have that this wine has is all this complexity in the middle and all this earthiness and minerality and botrytis, all the botrytis notes. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to get on Li Meng's private jet, and we don't have far to go. As a matter of fact, we're going to drive because this would be probably a 2-hour drive to get from the Pfalz and Deidesheim. And to get into the left of Berkeley and Wolf, you have what are called the Hart Mountains, which if you follow them across the Rhine River into France, it's the Vosges Mountains. It's the same thing. So here we are, Famille Hugel, which, talking about generations, I think the estate goes back to the 15th century. I could be wrong about that, but it goes back, way back. Again, it's a family-owned domain. They're known for their Grand Cru Rieslings and Pinot Gris. The Gewürztraminer for me is, the classic one is benchmark. I mean, this is exactly what Alsace Gewürztraminer should be. Jerry is saying sometimes an oily texture. Yes, Jerry, this has an oily texture. It really does. It's round, it's rich, it's unctuous. When I smelled it, you'd expect more residual sugar, right? And here is the Hugel vineyards. And you can see all those vineyards. They are facing west, I think. No, excuse me, east and southeast to get a lot of sunlight. There's Marc-André Hugel, and who knows how many generations, but he is the current winemaker. Incredible stuff. Okay, so now we can compare these two wines together. We got Riesling and Gewürztraminer. Okay, and there are times where, students say, well, it could be a Riesling or a Gewürztraminer. And that's like saying, I don't know if I'm going to watch PBS or a sitcom. Okay, they're that different, and you can see why. I mean, the Riesling to me is very linear. It's like a focused laser beam, and what focuses it is the acidity. I mean, Riesling is a high acid grape, and even though this one is rich, textured because of the quality, it's really high acid, and it's got the TDN working. The Gewürztraminer has botrytis. It's incredibly floral, and it's got phenolic bitterness, but also everybody goes I can taste the Riesling now for then retaste the Gewürztraminer. So taste the Riesling first. Wow. Okay. It feels like it totally drops off on the Gewürztraminer. But also notice what the alcohol does. The alcohol gets ratcheted up. Okay. So you can see, we're going to review these wines again at the end, but what we've got here is TDN and high acid. Yeah. And here we've got terpenes, flowers, phenolic bitterness, and botrytis. And then we've got high alcohol, and we've got really moderate, just adequate acidity. And that really makes the wines different. Okay, let's get to wine number 3. Okay, first red wine out of 4. And everybody, the color is it's a medium ruby. And it's a lighter ruby rim that's starting to fade. So the wine's maybe 2-3 years old. Okay. In terms of legs, tears, viscosity, marangoni, solid medium. They don't stain the glass, though. That's something that's important to note. On the nose, please smell it. My goodness. Okay. All right. So I'll start with the fruit. The fruit is predominantly red and tart. So it is tart red cherry, cranberry, raspberry, underripe strawberry. There's a little dark fruit here, darker fruit, but it too is acidic, underripe, like blackberry and maybe black cherry. Okay, predominantly red though. Okay, what else about it? Well, here, afterwards, then it's all about the non-fruit. And here we're looking for, as the questions say, looking for impact compounds. And one of them leaps out of the glass and yells at me, and that's green bell pepper and even green beans and green peppercorn. Okay. So this wine has pyrazines, like screaming pyrazines. Yep. So those 3 things. It smells like green beans and asparagus, and it smells like green bell pepper. And then besides that, above the glass, If you can like part your way through the vegetable cart, they're really pretty rose petal aromas. There is other green herbal type aromas like chervil, maybe chive, and then there's earth. There's mushroom and earth. There's also really a chalkiness to it, a dustiness to the wine. And then the oak here, if it's there, it's used. There's a very light spice and toast. Okay. All right. So that's what we got going on here. Let's taste it. Okay. This is kind of this is the disciplinarian after the Gewürztraminer, right? Hmm. All right. As is so often the case when you taste red wine, the fruit is tartar on the palate, and it was tart on the nose to begin with, right? So the fruit is really tart, cranberry, sour cherry. It's almost got pomegranate. That there's a little bitterness with the sour, and yeah, underripe strawberry. That's green, you know. But then the pyrazines. So the green bell pepper and the green bean and the grass. It's like almost licorice flavor, which would be what, like chervil and chive. And rose petal, not so much, but it is really earthy and chalky. It's got a chalky texture, dusty, chalk dust texture. The wood here is used. It's again, it's structural on the back. It doesn't provide a lot of tannins, but they're there. And what else? Let's taste it again for structure. Wow, this wine needs food. Although, I'll get back to that in a second because, different people have different tolerances to acid, alcohol, and tannin. Okay. We're going to get back to that. The structure, the alcohol is medium. This is like 12%. And you would think that. You're not going to have high alcohol in this kind of acid. Usually. There are exceptions, but usually not. The acid is high. I mean, it's squint high. And I can feel it on my teeth. And it really drives the finish of the wine. Tannin, though, is just over moderate. It's not really what's driving the wine is the underripe fruit and the pyrazines. The wine is also earthy and minerally. There's a mushroomy soil and like a chalk dust quality. The finish is long, surprisingly long, and medium plus in complexity. All right, so here are your choices. We've got Cabernet Franc blend, you've got Sangiovese, and you've got Pinot Noir. Your regions to choose from are for France for the Pinot Noir and Cabernet Franc blend, Italy certainly for Sangiovese, and California for all three, and then New Zealand certainly for Pinot Noir, although they make really good Cabernet Franc there, and there are a couple of producers that grow Sangiovese. Okay, all right, so everybody, consider everything we've talked about and place your votes, and let's see what we come up with. Da, 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 da. The Jeopardy music is going.
People go a lot faster by wine three though. I love the numbers are climbing a lot easier. I think people
Good.
get used to that. So I'm going to close it in about 5 seconds. So get your last votes in, please. Anonymous voting. And so far, Tim, I'm not going to say it out loud, but you can start seeing the patterns that are being drawn as a panelist. I'm going to
Yeah.
end the poll right now and share the results. So 79% of you thought that it was a Cabernet Franc, and 21% thought that it was Sangiovese, and no one thought of it as other. Uh,
Mm.
any thoughts there, Tim?
Yeah. Well, the main thing is, and I kept, kind of hammering it, is that the wine has screaming pyrazines, right? And that's going to take you to the Cabernet family. In this case, Cabernet Franc. Sangiovese doesn't have pyrazines. It certainly has the acidity of this wine, but it doesn't have the pyrazines. So let's get on our little Li Meng's private jet and let's see how far we have to go. Okay, so Peter pyrazine said, I'm going to type the answer in. Okay, so I don't have to spell it. There we go.
Tim, there was
All
a
right.
question that, sorry, there was a question that I missed on the last round. Um, Is it possible for Gewürztraminer to have TDN?
Sometimes, late harvest botrytis sweet Gewürztraminer, when it gets old, shows TDN. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We are in another place in France. We're in the Loire Valley. We're in the Touraine, and we're in Chinon, which is not far from Amboise, which, believe it or not, is where Leonardo da Vinci spent the last 4 years of his life. There's a great museum there. IBM has a museum. Okay, so this is textbook Touraine's Cabernet Franc from Chinon. The producer is Buisse, Paul Buisse. And again, this estate has been around for over 100 years now. 100% Cabernet Franc from Chinon. And I think the Lanier family has owned this estate now for over 50 years. So they make the wine. To me, this is textbook Chinon. So it's got the red fruit. A lot of Chinons, though, are, with climate change, they're darker, richer, deeper, darker fruit. But this is the Chinons that I learned, 40 years ago. Were exactly like this. Okay. Yes. This guy's, for those of you that are taking exams, this is a banker. This is the one you can take to an exam. Yeah. It's a good exam
Tim,
wine.
there's a question here from Dwayne Miller. How would one differentiate the difference between pyrazines in red versus white wines? I have a harder time detecting it in reds.
Um, well, okay, so that's a good question. So I would say take a wine like this, and hopefully you have a Coravin. Everybody listening to this, if you don't have a Coravin, you should get a Coravin. Okay. In which case you would buy a Pinot Noir and a Chinon like this. And then you would taste them next to each other probably 5 times, 7 times. And then all of a sudden your head would go, oh, okay, there's pyrazines. Yeah. Because you're not going to get this kind of green bean notes in Pinot Noir. So I think it's just a contrast comparison thing that you need to do. And certainly, they're easy to find in, say, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, also Sancerre. Yeah, good question. Okay, yeah, rock and roll.
I mean, Tim, I think for starters, when we go to wine number 4, wouldn't we be able to see pyrazines without, might be a good comparison there too?
Well, Li Meng, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So everybody, why don't we move to wine number 4? And here we go. So we're going to take a look at the color. And this is a deeper ruby. And the rim is fading out, and it's kind of like a lighter ruby, but it's starting to turn garnet. So maybe there's a few years of age on this. And as we do, take a look at that question. What does the wine's depth of color suggest about the possible grape? Okay, everybody, with that, we described the color of the wine, but in terms of the legs, tears, etc., this wine is richer. So the legs, tears, etc., they are thicker. They are taking longer to come down. There's still no staining of the tears really to speak of. All right, then on the nose. Okay. So again, a richer wine, kind of a mix of red and dark fruit, little riper. The red fruit here is strawberry, it's sour cherry, kind of cranberry, and it's ripe and tart. The darker fruit is once again things that have acid. So blackberry, black raspberry, and once again, they're fresh and ripe and tart. So I've got the ripe and tart thing going together. Interesting. The wine is floral above the glass. It's kind of, I would say, roses again. And one thing I want to comment is about the fruit is everybody just take a second and smell the wine and think about the quality of the fruit. So I said ripe and tart. Yeah, maybe fresh, but there's also something else about it. It reminds me, and I'll leave you a few seconds to smell it, process it. To me, it's, this is candied. This smells like Jolly Rancher. Okay. So interesting. Yeah. All right. Other things in the wine, it's herbal. There's some like some hibiscus, almost vitamin C type notes. There's a little bit of savory herbs like rosemary, maybe some chervil, maybe some thyme, and there's red licorice. Yeah. And then as far as the earth and mineral, there's There's both. I think there's some stony mineral and some turned earth. And then there's really, if there's wood, it's used. So there's really no wood to speak of. Amanda says Hickory Farm strawberry candy. Thank you, Amanda. I think that nails it. Okay. With that, everybody, let's taste it. Mm, okay. All righty. That's pretty tasty. Very technical term. Once again, all that fruit gets tartar on the palate. Yeah. So I would say it was candied. Yeah, I'd still say that gets a little tartar. It's like it is like hard candy, like strawberry, cherry hard candy. And there's a little menthol, minty quality to it as well. Curious. Okay. So the fruit goes tartar. I would say there's the herbal qualities are still there, the soil, the mineral. It's like hard granite, hard stone. And there's notice that there's really after the last wine, there's really a lack of tannin. It's very soft tannin, and the acid is medium plus. So my salivary glands are working. The previous wine, the Cabernet Franc, that acid was medium plus plus. It was really something. This, yeah, your salivary glands are taking a break. The finish, notice not as long, acid's not there to carry. And yeah, okay. So let's see what we have for our poll. Up at the top, we have Gamay, we've got Pinot Noir, and we've got Grenache. Those are three very different wines. And then in terms of country, France covers all those. Spain certainly covers Grenache for Garnacha, which is where the grape is from, and New Zealand for Pinot Noir, also for Gamay, frankly. They make some really nice Gamay there. And California for all three. So go ahead and place your bets, cast your votes. Let's see what we have.
So, as a reminder, you should definitely have wine 3 and wine 4 side by side because we're going to go back to it after we reveal this one. And Tim, I think if you're looking at the poll results coming in without saying it out loud, I think that you have your work cut out because folks are really struggling between two particular grape varieties here.
Okay, good. Well, okay,
All right,
let's
I'm
see
just
what
gonna
we
give
have.
it like 3 seconds for the last remaining folks to get in. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Sharing the results. So Tim, you've
Mm,
got 41% on
mm.
Gamay,
Yeah,
16% on Pinot. So I do think that there's enough people on Pinot.
yeah.
And then Grenache, 44%. So what is it? Which G I think are we landing on?
Okay, so let's start with Grenache. Let everybody, Grenache is a Rhone grape, thinner skin grape, grown in really warm climates, warm places, very savory, peppery, rotund. If you think about Grenache, I think about Chateauneuf de Pape, I think about Gigondas, Vacheras, Baume de Venise, all those southern rum wines. Yep. And maybe they don't have a lot of color, but they have a lot of alcohol and they have tannin and they have pepper and they have savory, sanguine, blood, Jimmy Dean, sausage, all that stuff. And garrigue and, lavender and Mediterranean. Okay. So this wine, by comparison, the alcohol is pretty rich for what this wine is. It's got the candied fruit thing, which is carbonic or semi-carbonic, and it's also got really soft tannins. Okay. Is it Pinot Noir? Probably not. I would expect Pinot Noir, this color, to have oak. Yeah. Any decent Pinot Noir, but that has richness, would have oak on it, and frankly, would be more complex. Okay. So let's see where we are and let's talk about it because it's a good dichotomy. And those that cast your vote for Grenache, just, hang on to that. We're going to taste these side by side. All right. Let's see how far we have to go. The answer is not that far. If you hop into Li Meng's little Learjet, you're going to be there in 45 minutes or an hour, if that. So we're going back to Burgundy. We're going to Beaujolais. This is Beaujolais Village from a ripe vintage. So the alcohol is higher than usual. It's riper than usual. It still has the carbonic notes. It's got the soft tannins. One thing that we didn't talk about that it does have some stem tannin. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and taste it again. You should too. Almasan is, they've been a negociant in Beaujolais since the 1860s. And they also famously in 1932 bought the Grand Cru monopole in the Côte de Nuit called Clos de Tar. And they owned that. That was one of the great vineyards in Burgundy. They owned it. They sold it to a billionaire in 2017. Anyway, but they are known for Beaujolais and they make excellent Beaujolais. And again, this is from a riper vintage, 2020. Okay. But now everybody, to prove some points, go back and taste the Chinon. Okay. And so, my goodness. All right, so the Chinon by comparison has little less alcohol. It's got much higher acidity. It's got higher tannins, and it is green, green, green pyrazines. Okay, so who is that? I'm going to go up in my comments and see if I can find you who is having trouble between finding pyrazines in red wine.
Was in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So whoever that was, so these would be two good wines to leave in a glass and taste these several times over the next, say, hour or two once we get done. Because I think this is a really stark comparison. You know, the Chinon with its pyrazines and high acid and chalky and stemmy. What these two do have in common is the stem tannin. But, you know, Chinon to me, there's always a disconnect between the nose and the palate. The palate is bone dry and it's really acidic and it needs food. It's chalky.
Mhm.
The Beaujolais by comparison is fun wine. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's got the candied, what was that? What did Amanda say?
Hickory Farm strawberry candy. Um, yeah,
Hickory
Tim, you
Farms, yes.
yeah, Tim, you cut out a little bit when you were talking about stem, tannin, and teeth. Were you
Yeah.
saying that the Beaujolais tasted like it had stem inclusion?
Oh, it does. No doubt it does. Yeah, and again, stem tannins for both wines. Everybody, take a taste, and even with the Chinon, you hold it in your mouth, spit it out, and you get a really green, kind of bitter quality. You know, in the mid palate on the roof of your mouth. And to me, that's the stem tannins. Yeah.
And Tim,
Leon is
Ivan,
asking about Cabernet Franc and wild characteristics. Possibly, Liana. Do you know what? For me, this Chinon doesn't, but many Chinons have Brettanomyces. Many of them do. Okay. New message. Okay.
there is a question here from Ivan. Why is this Beaujolais deeper in color?
Riper vintage. Good question. Usually not. But also, you know, even in a usual typical Beaujolais village, you're pulling a lot of color because of carbonic. Yeah, that's why. And you know, frankly, the Chinon usually has deeper color. It's Cabernet Franc, but this particular producer, not so much. Who knows? But I'll again, once I will tell you that the Chinons that I tasted eons ago when I first got into wine looked and tasted like this one. So this is pretty classic. Yeah.
Mhm. I think that the pyrazines are a real study in between these two wines. That's really
Yeah.
helpful, Tim.
Yeah. And everybody, you know, if those of you you're listening and you're saying, oh my God, I'm not getting the pyrazines. Okay. And I've said this before, and I'm repeating myself. So you buy a green bell pepper, you cut it in half, you put it in a bowl, you put it in your refrigerator, and you leave it. 5 to 7 days, you open the refrigerator, you're going to be assaulted by pyrazines. And at some point, your brain's going to reach threshold and you're going to take it out and take it outside and throw it away. Don't throw it away inside because it's going to stink the place up. Okay. And if you do that, you will be able to detect pyrazines in the next county. Okay. All right. Who is it? I just saw a comment. Yes, this wine has higher alcohol than most Beaujolais villages. And once again, that is the vintage. Yeah. And it's developed. Yeah, that's why. Yeah. And also Beaujolais Village, you know, this is Rosalie. Why is the colors a little advanced? Yeah, it's old. You're supposed to drink Beaujolais Village within 2 to 3 years. So yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that Tim and I were trying, Tim made the selection and I was trying to buy a 23 vintage, but when we talked to our supplier, that's what they had. So one of the things in the wine world, you guys can see some things slowing down in the marketplace, but the distributor is having to hold on to some older vintages for sure.
So Daniel, your comment's a really good one, but Beaujolais Village from a good producer is serious quality wine. It's delicious, and I like to drink it. And you're right, Beaujolais Nouveau doesn't have a lot of color, and it smells like bubble gum and Hawaiian punch, and you should drink it by Christmas or you should regift it. Okay, we're going to go on to wine number 5, and now, as they say on TV, for something completely different. So everybody, as you take your glass, and it's the same questions. Look at the depth of color. What could it mean for the grapes? What are the important impact compounds? And how would you describe the structure of the wine? Well, I would look at the color of the wine. So this is whatever it is from a thinner skinned red grape. Yeah, it's garnet. It's already garnet. The edge is even like bordering on orange. So whatever
Sorry,
this
Tim, you cut
is,
out
that
for a little bit. So you're saying that it doesn't have a lot of color and it's
it doesn't
garnet.
have a lot of color and the edge is really evolved. So whatever
Mm.
this is, it's either old or it's a grape that shows oxidation early. Okay? All right. So everybody on the nose. Okay. All right. There are many things going on, as they say in storytelling. We're going to start with the fruit. The fruit is predominantly red. It is ripe and dried and almost stewed. Okay? I would say cherries predominantly, plums, maybe what else? Maybe cranberries, as in craisins. It reminds me of fruit leather that you give your kids for school lunches. Okay. What else? And again, the quality though, it is dry and ripe, and it's tart at the same time. It's very curious. I'll be curious to see what it does on the palate. Otherwise than that, the wine is all about non-fruit. It's really quite floral for a red wine. I would say it's like dried rose petals and potpourri. And then it's very savory, but it's anise, it's mushroom, it's leather. Um, it's like dried savory herbs. Um, and what else? It's earthy, it's truffle, it's mushroom. There's a little chalky, dusty quality to it. And there's definitely oak here. It's a mix of used and new. So there is some toast and smoke and spice. This is definitely not your sexy, expensive 225-liter barriques that you'd see in, say, Bordeaux, but this is larger barrels. So
Mm.
this is a mix of new and used oak, okay? And the wine comes across on the nose as powerful, right? And that's really curious because of the color. You don't expect a powerful wine having so little color. So everybody, let's taste it and see what we have. First, response to the wine is that it's grown-up wine. It's bone dry. The wine has high acid, high tannin, and high alcohol. All three. Okay? So that describes the structure. This is really an intensely focused, concentrated, powerful wine. At the same time, notice it is balanced. If we go back to the fruit now is all dried and tart. It's all red, predominantly cherry, but there's plum and cranberry craisin. What else about it? You can actually taste the floral. It tastes like it's more herbal on the palate. There's dried savory herbs. Star anise really comes across. It's leather. There's truffle. There's mushroom. It's really earthy and yet it's chalky at the same time. And I can feel the alcohol right here. It's really complex wine. What else? It needs food. And but I think we described the structure. Everybody for science, take another sip. This is where you see high acid, high tannin wines compound, and they get more tannic every time you taste them. Long finish, high quality. Here are your choices. We have Nebbiolo, we have Grenache Blend, we have Pinot Noir. So we have Italy for Nebbiolo, we have France for Grenache and Pinot Noir, we have California for Pinot Noir, but Grenache too, and New Zealand for Pinot Noir. So everybody vote, and we'll see what we have.
If you've put out 6 glasses, as you should, it's really interesting to put all of these colors side by side, Tim.
Yes. Yeah, it is, but it also tells you that, the color for a red wine can be deceiving.
Mm.
You look at a red wine, and you build expectations about it from the color, but knowing that there are exceptions to the rules. some major ones like this one. So Steph is asking, I would call those tannins gritty and coarse. Chalky possibly, but chalky is, yeah, the texture is a little kinder. These tannins are gritty. So this wine needs 7 to 10 years in the cellar. Or if you're going to drink it tonight, you should decant it and leave it for an hour. And then you need to have it with the right things. And that whatever that protein is, it's going to have fat, salt, fat and salt together. Okay, long finish. Yeah, and Jerry, VA, good call. All right, so let's see what we have.
Most people are at Nebbiolo at 87%. There are some at
So this is
Grenache
indeed
and,
Barolo. Yeah, so good. The thing about the Grenache call is that from the appearance, it makes sense because Grenache is another red grape that shows oxidation early. It can, if made in traditional ways. But this has that trinity of high tannin alcohol and acidity. And so it can really only be what it is. Yeah. Okay. And Jerry says VA. Yeah, Jerry, there's definitely some VA on the nose. Yeah. And even on the palate.
Tim, can
So,
you describe what Jerry means by VA and
yeah.
how you're detecting it?
Yeah. So the wine smells like vinegar. So VA, volatile acidity, is acetobacter. It's vinegar. And, it's above, if you pull your nose back a little bit, volatile acidity means it rises. So, yeah. So, Daniel, there's also Sangiovese, and there's also Nero d'Avola and Frappato and things like that. Well, Frappato, not so tannic. Steph is asking Li Ming if they can get full bottles of these wines through you.
No, we don't sell full bottles. I'm sorry, but we do tell you what they are. And in some cases, if we know that a particular producer carries it, we would put that in the buy link on our on the wines page. So you can
Yeah,
definitely see that.
yeah. Um, I would just say, we're going to go to Piemonte, Northwest Italy. It's a gorgeous place.
Mhm.
Very hilly, very pretty. And this is Barolo from Da Milano, which is a really, really good producer. Le Cinque Vigna, it means what it says. It's a blend of 5 vineyards. Yeah. Their
Mhm.
Barbera too is superb. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. What else
I
do we?
just want to point out one thing, Tim, for those who are joining us for the first time, we do try to get an average of $30 retail across the 6 wines, but you'll see that it's easier to spend less money on the white wines, and it's much easier to spend a lot more money on the red wines. So when you
Yeah.
see our numbers like, hey, they're only spending $17 for a particular wine on this, it's because we've kind of saved the powder for somewhere else, if you will.
Yeah. So Daniel, old school Brunello Reserva, especially that you get and it's 5 or 6 years old, can have a lighter color. Maybe not this light, but close. Yeah. Okay. There's Da Milano. And there's Guido, Mario, and Paolo, the owners and winemakers. I'd love to have a drink with these guys. I'd have a Negroni with them. Okay, so now and we have 3 red wines we can talk about. How does the Barolo differ? Well, structurally, it's just a different animal. It's got higher acid, higher tannin, higher alcohol than all 3 of them. It takes it. What else about it? It's a wine that shows oxidation early. Obviously, doesn't have the pyrazines of the Chinon. It doesn't have the candied quality that Beaujolais has. Doesn't have the stem inclusion that either of the first 2 red wines have. And it's just a powerful singular expression of wine. And one that you can see, this is probably my first favorite red grape is Pinot Noir. Only I can't afford the best wines. There's just no affording them now. And then, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo go neck and neck in terms of my second favorite one. I go back and forth on them. All right, we need to get to wine number 6. And now, once again, for something completely different. So everybody take your white background. And here we go. So this is like a deep, youthful ruby. And even shows a little magenta in the rim. So a totally different character of wine than the Barolo you just had. In terms of the viscosity, yeah, like the previous wine, the viscosity is high. Yeah. And there is some staining of the tears. Okay. Not a lot, but there is some. All right. On the nose. That smells yummy. this technical term. Okay. Wow. Okay. So here, this is a lot of different fruits. It's red and dark fruits together. There's even some blueberry here, but there is black cherry and plum, and even bean cherry, and they are ripe and a little bit of tart quality too. The red fruits are ripe red cherry, red plum, maybe some cranberry, and then the blueberry. So it's, interesting. It's a lot of different kinds of fruit in one red wine. That's an important clue. What else about it? Smells like black pepper. It smells savory. There's like, it's almost like one of those, they when you order steaks from a steak, frozen steaks, they show up and they always have the custom spice mix. And from there, what it is missing is earth. There's very little earth here. There's definitely some oak, and it is spicy and toasty. I get some vanilla, spice, toast. Yeah, and it smells delicious. Okay, everybody, let's taste it, please. Mm, okay, it's like a cashmere sweater after the last wine. It is soft, but the tannins, the longer you have the wine in your mouth, the tannins, you can see there's quite a bit of tannin here, but it's integrated, it's soft. Okay, the wine does tartan up a little bit, as red wines usually do. All that ripe fruit, it's very fresh, tartans up. The pepper is stronger. That's what I'm getting on the finish, black pepper. What else? The fruit is predominantly red on the palate. It's like strawberries. Strawberries and cranberries. There's a little bit of the darker fruit. What else? It's that savory, the spice mix, and it's savory herbs, softer tannins. The alcohol, I'm going to taste it again. Mm, the alcohol's high. Yeah, alcohol's high. The tannins are medium, soft, integrated, really well handled. And acid is medium plus, surprising. Salivary glands working. So the wine is really ripe, which makes me suspect it was acidulated. Yep. Okay, so here are your choices, ladies and gentlemen. First, a Grenache blend, a Sangiovese blend, Cabernet blend. Your countries are Italy for the Sangiovese blend, France for the Grenache blend, Cabernet blend, Chile for the Cabernet blend, and then Australia for all three. Okay, so everybody, I don't know about you, but this is, out of all four red wines, this is the one you sit by the side of the pool and you sip, right? Mm, that's yummy. So oats, yeah, for Grenache blend,
Uh-huh.
Sangiovese blend, and Cabernet blend. Okay, so everybody, if anything that you could key on as I described the wine was really a complete lack of earth and mineral. I mean, there's kind of a dusty quality to the wine, but there's really not much happening there. So that would take you out of Italy and France, Chile, maybe not. Cabernet is tannic. Sangiovese also would be earthy and have grape tannins and acid, really pronounced acidity and probably some oak tannin. Okay. Okay. All right. So that leaves us with Grenache and my allusions to the pepper and the savory qualities, right? And the steak spice mix. Okay. And so let's see what we have because, Li Ming, I got to hand it to you. When you told me where you were going to use this wine, I got dangerously excited
Mhm.
because this is from one of my very favorite producers in Australia. And
Yeah.
I've been there, and I know Madeline is listening, and she's been there too. And we like, had this total fanboy moment about this winery, and it is one of the top wineries in Australia. So we are going to actually Eden Valley is where the winery is. It's going to be an overnight flight, and we're going to South Australia, and we're going to Eden Valley, and we're going to the Henschke Winery. And yeah, I got to go there and taste once, actually quite a few years ago in 2010. But it's remarkable. And so Henschke, of course, is known for Hill of Grace Shiraz, which is one of the two most collectible and best wines of Australia. Grange of Penfolds is the other ones. Um, Stephen Henschke and his wife Prue, who's a viticulturist, are just both remarkable. And when we were there, I was with a group of MS students. We tasted about 20 wines, and four of them were white and the others were red. And they were all from really old vineyard sources, old here being 100 to 130 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one
Okay.
almost broke the bank here, Tim.
And Johan's Garden is in, well, yeah, well, yeah, I know. Well, it's kind of worth it. So this is a Grenache blend. In this particular vintage, sometimes there's Mataro Mourvedre and Syrah, but this is 90% Grenache in this vintage and 10% Mataro, which is their word for Mourvedre. And yeah, the vineyards here are 75 to 110 years old. Okay. And that's the Mount Edelstone Vineyard, which is where their best Shiraz comes from. It's in Eden Valley. It's just that, Stephen Henschke is a master of tannin management. That's him on the left. He's an absolute sweetheart. That's his son, Johan, who's doing most of the wine making now. But, again, this is really a great example of New World Grenache. This is about as good as it gets. Okay, so this is pretty easy. We talk about Grenache versus Nebbiolo. Well, this is like Hello Kitty compared to the Nebbiolo. So this has softer tannins. It still has high alcohol. The acid's medium plus, and I know for a fact it's acidulated, right? The Damilano by comparison has really high tannins. It's bone dry, high acid, high alcohol, and the wine is all dried. What's Melissa Waldrop asked, what's the market difference between Shiraz, Australian Shiraz, and maybe Australian Grenache? To me, the Australian Shiraz, much darker in color, more darker fruit, more savory qualities, and maybe more tannin too. Jerry says, unusual for Grenache to show black and blue fruit. Yeah, kind of, but this has to me both, and it's, yeah, maybe. Usually the Australian Shirazes that I've tasted are predominantly red fruit. They also have more mint and eucalyptus than this one does. Okay. Okay, what else? I'm
Tim,
looking.
just going back a little bit since we're comparing 5 and 6, there was a question about Nebbiolo being a thick-skinned grape,
Yeah,
and yet number 5 showing such light color,
yeah.
throwing people off. You
What's a
think
thinner
the
skin grape? No, yeah. So Nebbiolo is a thinner skin grape. It is. Yeah, and Grenache is too. But again, it depends on how you make it, and also the age of the vines. I mean, these are really old vines. You're going to get smaller berries. You're going to get more color. Yeah. And Lynn
I'm
says,
sorry,
but
just
also,
to sum it up, you're saying that because even though Nebbiolo is a thinner skinned grape and the Grenache is a thinner skinned grape, it just depends on the age of the vine. It depends on the extraction, obviously, that
yeah.
they're doing to it and the age of the wine.
Well, okay. So to sum up, yes. So both of these grapes here are thinner skin grapes, right? The way that they're fermented. So I'm thinking, and I'm pretty sure that the Henschke is whole cluster, right? Or it's at least partial whole cluster. The Damilano is done in large cooperage, and again, it's thinner skin grape, and they're not after color. The only thing they try to do to get color in Barolo is they leave the grapes on the vines until November. So, and actually, I agree with somebody said, I think the Mataro here is giving the wine more color. Yeah, because Mourvedre, thicker skin, and is really adds a lot of color and tannin. That makes sense. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. I like Dwayne's comment. I feel it too, Dwayne. You're not the only one. I think it is, the beauty of it is that the world of wine is so complicated, and there's stuff that's happening in the vineyard, there's stuff that is happening in winemaking, and we're trying to learn by comparison, which I think
Yeah.
your next few slides are really helpful that way.
Yeah. And Jerry, I want to go back to your comment. Once again, I think it's this unusual for Australian Grenache to have this much color. It's unusual. And again, I have to attribute that to the little bit of Mataro that's in there. Okay. So I think we compared, the Grenache, versus Nebbiolo in terms of the structure. pepper that's in the Grenache, the oxidative quality that's in the Nebbiolo. Okay. So actually, Yvonne, in this particular vintage, there's no Shiraz. It's all Mataro. Okay, so let's sum up these wines, and then we can go to the happy half hour, and we can answer more questions. So with the Dr. Birkeland Wolf Rieslings, we had TDN, a broad range of fruit, and on the structure, the important thing was high acidity. With the Ugel, we had this trio of terpenes, flowers, botrytis, and the phenolic bitterness, and then a conspicuous lack of acidity. Okay? All right, and then moving to the next slide. So Paul Bouchinon was all about pyrazines, and for me, elevated acidity, but it's the pyrazines and the stem inclusion. The Beaujolais Village is the carbonic, semi-carbonic, candied kind of quality with stem inclusion, and the really lack of tannins, very soft tannins, okay? And then we get to the Da Milano, the Nebbiolo, which was acidic, tannic, and had high alcohol, and dried kind of raisinated fruit. And finally, Henschke with its peppery qualities, high alcohol, and really soft integrated tannins, even though there were a lot. Okay. So that's what we had. I think this is a pretty good flight of wines. I'd be happy
You
drinking
make
of
it
any.
sound so easy, but I know it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps though. I hope folks, as you see these slides, and we will post this very shortly, you will see that you can go back, if you will, to compare things that have rotundan and don't have rotundan, what has dried and raisinated fruit and what doesn't. I think that Tim is really spelling that out pretty clearly here.
Yeah, and hopefully you still have enough wine in the bottles that you can, go back and forth over the next hour or two and, just compare and contrast because a lot of this is getting this into muscle memory, your sensory memory. Okay, so as your attorney, as you go forward, whatever grid you're using, which is the WSET grid or the MS grid or the whatever grid, you need to memorize it such that you can teach it. You can explain it to someone because that's when it's in long-term memory. That's when you really know it. Study cause and effect. And then like today, we were doing key on impact compounds and structure. And those things will set you free. They'll really help you improve your tasting. Okay. Liana, thanks for that. There is my book. Check it out. Check out my blog. And I have a Substack too, where I write about non-wine things, but I just published a couple days ago.
Also wanted to offer this for those of you who are interested in studying by the SAT method. We do have a QR code here for you to download the SAT tasting sheets. They look something like this. It's way too much information for us to get through on a call like this, but this is just for you to see that we have for every single wine some SAT sheets, and we're going to try our darndest to do these for every kit from here on forth.